Hello, everyone. I'm Detective Tom Smith. I'm with the Mesa PD HEAT unit. HEAT stands for Human Exploitation and Trafficking. And I'm here with my coworkers. I'll have them introduce themselves as well.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kathleen Noriega. I've been with Mesa for about 16 years and been with the HEAT squad since 2016.
And I'm Jason Swy. Been with the department 8 years, 5 on patrol, 2 with criminal investigative detective work, and currently with HEAT.
Thank you, guys. Prior to being on this unit, I was in patrol for 7 years, and we go on a lot of calls with you guys. And kind of one of the things we want to stress today is a lot of the victims that we deal with, they may not be as comfortable talking to a uniformed police officer. They may be more comfortable saying something to you guys, or you guys may get on scene before we do, or it may just be a med call or something like that. So we're going to talk about a lot of different indicators. This is our first time, well, today and yesterday was our first time doing a presentation for you guys. So we weren't entirely sure what all to put in. So it's basically going to be a overview of sex trafficking, and then some things for you guys to look for, and a little bit about what we do for our unit as well. So we'll get going. So the first thing is the difference between sex trafficking and prostitution. And trafficking involves a pimp, which is basically a person that is controlling the victim in this case. It'll probably involve some sort of force, fraud, or coercion. And by force, it could be physical force, threats of some kind of force. They could be using some sort of fraud or deception to get them to do whatever it is that they're having them do. The victim most often surrenders all of their proceeds. Sometimes it's just some of their proceeds, or if they have some kind of arrangement or something like that. But usually the pimp is taking all, or at least some of whatever the money is that they're making. The victims, they will lack freedom of movement. They're not going to be allowed to leave wherever it is that their pimp has them working out of. Not all the time, but a lot of time that's how it is. A lot of times, even basic needs and things like that, they have to earn the money for their pimp to allow them to do whatever that is. It might even be food or something like that they have to hit a quota for before they're allowed to partake in that. We already talked about the threats and violence. Another thing that they use a lot of times is incriminating information against their victims. It could be a video or photos or something like that of things that they're engaged in that they could threaten their victim to show their family or put on the internet or something like that, to embarrass them and destroy their reputation or something like that. So those are all things that could be involved with adult human trafficking. However, if it's a juvenile involved, it doesn't have to have any of the force, fraud, or coercion. Anytime there is a juvenile involved in prostitution, it is considered sex trafficking. Do you guys have anything for that?
No.
And then just your straight up prostitution without trafficking. This is a situation where you have a person who's just doing this on their own. They don't have a pimp or someone who's controlling them. They don't have to share their money with anyone or anything like that. They can come and go from this as they please. They don't have any issues with that. One thing though, a lot of people, they get a little bit cynical in our world, and they kind of assume the people who are in this kind of life, yeah, it's just what they want to do, and it's just their thing. But you got to realize that a lot of them probably started out as trafficked juveniles. I think we could all agree that nobody as a kid wakes up and decides that they want to be involved in prostitution someday. There's things that happen in life, which may be being controlled or something like that, that have gotten them into that and normalized it for them. All right, so we've got the wolf in sheep's clothing here. And the term we use for the pimp or the trafficker getting them into this life is grooming. This happens, it can be online or in person or however that they'll start communication with their victim. They'll usually look for more vulnerable people, which now they're with the pandemic and people losing their jobs and things like that. There's probably a lot more vulnerable people right now that are looking to try and make money or something like that. Then potentially you have a guy coming in posing as, wanting to be their boyfriend or something. A lot of times they'll try and isolate them from other people that are in their life. They'll use degradation, even sometimes physical or emotional torture to control these people into having them do what they want them to do. Sometimes they'll use gifts or other kinds of indulgences to reinforce their relationship with them, and really just keep them doing whatever it is that they want. And oftentimes this process, it causes the victims to really not see themselves as a victim of this. And there may be cases where they're, like we talked about with independent people being somewhat willing participants, but how they got there is a big deal. And then of course, if they're not self-identifying as a victim, a lot of times they're not going to report what's happening to them. So that can be really challenging for us in our investigations. All right, so who is likely to come upon crimes of human trafficking? Really, I mean, anybody could come across this stuff, but a lot of times we just don't know what to look for a lot of times. We talk about domestic abuse. Many times the trafficker could be a husband or an actual sort of boyfriend or something like that with someone. So looking more into, as far as with investigations like domestic calls and things like that, come across these people with medical issues, whether it's injuries or STDs or early, like very young pregnancies and things like that. Those can be clues for medical providers to look out for. Oftentimes we'll get calls at hotels or motels, where most of the time it's never going to be reported straight up that this person's doing prostitution here. It starts out with some kind of an altercation or something, and then it gets investigated further. A lot of kids in the foster care system or shelters, they can be particularly vulnerable and good targets for the traffickers. A lot of these people they'll be surfing profiles on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and trying to profile their victims to find people who would be good candidates for their work. Even retail businesses, specifically out here in the city of Mesa, we'll talk a little bit more later. We have a lot of massage businesses that are not really massage businesses, that are actually brothels with potential trafficking victims working at them. And a lot of these people, they end up through their counseling services disclosing what is actually going on. So they may be contacted on a call for service, they may be a runaway that has been found or something like that, and may take them a long time to actually disclose what was going on when they were away or something like that, and then they end up telling it to a counselor at some point.
One of the things that we're finding about our sex trafficked juvenile is they don't all come from group homes. They're not all what they coin throwaway kids. We have kids that come from good homes. We have kids that, just the wrong place, wrong time. So sometimes it's really hard to specifically pinpoint who and this is happening to, because some of our pimps are family members. We've had kids, we've had a couple of guys at college who were pimping out girls. We have had people from the church who have done this. So kind of from all walks of life. It doesn't target one specific group. So sometimes it's hard to grasp that, oh, this looks like a good kid or a clean kid, or they're dressed nice, they can't be involved in this. And that's not always the case.
All right, so we're going to talk about some of the indicators that you might see. We talked a little bit before, chronic runaways or homeless youth. This is probably one of the really common things we see when, and it can be boys or girls. It is more common with females, but they'll be running away and whatnot. They may get recovered, come back to their group home, or go back into the system. And oftentimes they may come back with a new phone or money or new clothes or something like that that they didn't have before. And that can be a clue that, that's stuff that their trafficker gave them or that they were using when they were out. Obviously, if they've got, if it's an underage person or something like that with hotel room keys, that's a clue. If it's an adult that's got multiple different types of hotel room keys, that could be a clue also, as they may be doing some hotel hopping, which just isn't normal behavior for a regular adult. If you're going to go somewhere and stay in a hotel, you're probably going to just stay at one hotel. Brandings, those can be tattoos, piercings, or jewelry that are specific to the prostitution life. And we'll show some examples of some tattoos in a little bit here. People lying about their age or providing false identification. Yesterday in our presentation, we talked to you guys a little bit about this as far as seeing if or how you guys confirm someone's identity if you're talking to them and they don't have an ID or something like that. But people lie about their age for or lie about their ID and whatnot for a reason. They don't want to be caught doing whatever they're doing. A lot of times they have warrants for arrest. Or if it's a younger person that is a runaway, they don't want to get caught and go back to wherever it is that they were coming from. So definitely, if you guys have someone who you're questioning their age or their ID or something like that, have patrol come out and they can hopefully help figure that out. The provocative clothing can be a clue. They're not always going to be wearing provocative clothing. It just kind of depends on what they're doing and where they're at in it, or they may have a bag or something with whatever clothes they're using for when they're working separately. They may be unsure of where they're at if their pimp is taking them to various locations. They may not really know where they are. Definitely, if there is a male that's present, they seem intimidated by that guy, that would be a good clue. And of course, potentially have patrol come out and have them take a look at what they see going on there.
Now, we know that you guys aren't going to be dealing with a lot of these different indicators, but sometimes when you guys might be dealing with them is if you're called to a hotel or a motel room and you're inside and you're assisting somebody and you notice, lingerie laying around or a lot of condoms laying around or, feminine products or a bunch of cell phones. And some of the things that you guys can do for us is if you see those things before they get hidden, or if you hear things before, patrol shows up, if patrol's called. But if you see some of these things, definitely call for patrol to come out and assist. Because a lot of times, like Tom was saying about the ID, the person that you're helping, the female that you're helping may not have any ID on them whatsoever. But the one person that maybe is trying to talk for them could be the prominent male, which would be the pimp, or a prominent female, which is called a bottom girl, who's basically the one that's in control running the girls for the pimp. They usually take their IDs. They usually do a lot of talking for them. Or you could find, you go to a hotel or motel room and this person who appears to be underage has just been left there by themselves. That's another key factor.
Just to kind of piggyback on that, just a couple little terms. Kathleen mentioned a bottom. So, the head person in charge would be the pimp basically, but they'll oftentimes have a female that's also kind of in charge of the other females, and she would be referred to as the bottom bitch. Pardon the French, but that's just what it's called. And they just may be referred to as bottom or something like that by the other girls or by themselves. All right, so here are some indicators or some brandings, some examples of some of those. A lot of times they'll have the pimp's name or street name or something like that. You've got the crown on the girl on the left there with, it looks like it says King Pooh or something for his name. The crown one is pretty common, and then putting the pimp's name, kind of like he's the king or something like that.
Dollar signs are also pretty common.
Yep. Yeah, and the crowns looks like it's got the dollar signs and stuff on it too. Definitely the tattoo that says horror life might be a clue that they're involved in that life. So just kind of, a lot of people have tattoos that are completely innocent, and most of the time they are, but tattoos are always a great thing to look at. I could tell you a little bit more about that person or what's going on in their life. Some more indicators. A young girl who's talking about her older boyfriend, or maybe the older boyfriend is the dude that's there. She's definitely appearing pretty young, and it's an abnormal age gap. When you're making conversation or even asking the required questions, if the answers they're given just don't make sense, that's always a clue that there's something else going on there. They're not wanting to tell you the truth about things, or purposely trying to leave things out or give you a story. Obviously, a lot of sexual partners at a young age. I think you could probably say that could break down someone's barriers to try and be involved in something like this, or that might be a result of that. If you happen to be seeing, whether it's, in your own life, you see people who are having sexually explicit stuff on their social media, that can be a clue. Or while you're on a call, you happen to see their social media up on their phone or something like that, and are seeing sexually explicit stuff, that's a clue. Sometimes absences from school could be an indicator, although not always. Kids could be doing this stuff after school or on the weekends or something like that, but they are not in school regularly without an explanation. That could be a clue. We already kind of talked about injuries or physical abuse. and finding out where those came from. It could be stuff from their pimp, some sort of punishment or control over them, or it could even be them getting injured by a John or something like that. And for those of you who don't know, a John is a term for a whoever the purchaser is of sex with that other person. And also, as mentioned before, they may have to earn their basic needs, such as food and so forth. So they're probably not going to be in good physical health. They may be very fatigued. I mean, it's really sad if you were going through 10 deals a day, for lack of a better term. That could be very, very hard on your body. Just one of the many terrible things that happens to people in this. And a lot of times these people will reject their family and friends. They may have started off with some sort of a rift between them that pushed them toward their pimp or something like that. And it could still be something like that, or it could also be part of the grooming of the pimp, or them being embarrassed of their family and friends knowing what's going on in their life. So if you're talking to someone trying to get, a relative or somebody that could help them and they're not able to provide anything, that could be a clue. So as mentioned before, with the victims, it can be really challenging for law enforcement specifically to talk to them, because they're trained to not trust police. They're told that they're going to be the ones that get in trouble, they're going to go to jail, and all this stuff. And our unit specifically, we have a victim-centered approach where we really want to help these people. We wear plain clothes and try to appear less like, a regular police officer when we're talking to our victims, to try and minimize that some. But they still know we're cops, and so they still have a hard time trusting us, which is why I think this is important for you guys, because hoping that they may be more comfortable talking to you.
And they may do or say something that you guys think is kind of odd. And if you're able to, like jot that down, whatever was said, or whatever they did that was kind of out of the ordinary, so you can pass that on. Even if you're unsure, you can always pass that on and say, something was said or something didn't seem right. I just have a funny feeling about it. There's nothing wrong with passing that on to PD and having us take a look at it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can everyone make sure they have their mute on the computers? Most people or everyone's on the computer is muted, but we cannot tell if the phone calls are muted. So please make sure it's muted. Thank you.
Brent, if you click on participants as the host, you can go in and just click on the microphone and mute the ones that aren't muted.
So I'm not the host right now. So, and it's not working on the phones, but we'll try and work on that. Thanks, Dave. Okay, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. But anyways, yeah, like Kathleen was saying, if you guys are in doubt or think there might be something going on, don't hesitate to have patrol come out and invest further. Or if they're already on their way, just let them know whatever it is that you've observed that has given you that concern. Again, with them not self-identifying as victims, it may take years for them to realize that they were victimized in this way. I can think of two incidents where these were 15, 20 years ago that finally someone decided that they wanted to come forward and talk about what happened to them. So keep in mind too, if you do have something that you report, something doesn't happen right away on it, it's not that nothing ever will happen. It may just take a lot of time for the victim to actually see themselves as a victim and decide that they want to really talk about what's going on. They may be afraid for their family members. Their trafficker may have threatened them, explaining that they probably know where their family lives, and could possibly hurt them, or also might be part of the embarrassment, like embarrassing the family or embarrassing the trafficked person to the family. They're going to be afraid that if they get out of this life, that they may not have their basic needs met anymore. And we want them to know that we have resources. We have access to a lot of different shelters and things that can help them, so they don't have to worry about that. Really challenging part of their mindset is they may think that where they're at now is better than whatever they had before. They may have been in an abusive relationship, abusive family, in a foster care system or group homes or something like that, where they just felt like nobody cared for them, and they feel like their pimp or whoever it is cares for them now, and that's better. And obviously we want a better life for them than that. And again, with it might just boil down to them being embarrassed and afraid to talk about being involved in this life, as a lot of people are. All right, so we talked about some indicators of a potential victim, and we'll talk about some indicators of what a trafficker might look like, or what you might see with them. So they're probably going to control the money. If you've got a dude with a bunch of cash or money, and yet he tells you he doesn't have a job or anything like that, that might be a clue that he's getting it through some sort of less than legal means. They may not know all that much about the females or their backgrounds. Sometimes you'll have them tell you one name for the female, and the female might give you another name. That could be a clue. They may have multiple phones, whether it's multiple of their own phones or they're controlling the girls' phones as well. And pardon me for saying girls, is just most common that it is females. Also nowadays, there's many forms of communication other than just with your traditional cell phone number. They could just have one phone and be using text apps or Telegram, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, whatever else to communicate. Pimp may have tattoos of his own that are promoting their pimping and living life for money and so forth. They'll oftentimes kind of speak over or speak for the females. May refer to them as girlfriend.
Or baby mama.
Yep, or baby mama. Kathleen, you had one where the dude was in the car with his wife, his girlfriend, and his ex-girlfriend or something like that.
And his baby mama.
Yeah.
He said they were all going out on a trip.
Yeah. So I don't think anybody really wants to be the dude who's in the car with all of those relationships. So that's maybe a clue. A mention of rental cars. They'll oftentimes use rental cars for their mode of transportation. Not always, for sure. They'll also quite often use ride shares like Uber or Lyft to send the girls to their appointments. So that can be a clue. And they may be referred to, some common names for pimps are Mac, Daddy, or P. Anything else you guys want to add anything? So and you guys will not obviously be collecting evidence or anything like that, but just things to be aware of or that you may see on a scene that would be good to relay to the patrol officers.
Whether it's like a traffic accident or you're called to a hotel or a motel, or, somebody on the side of the road or whatever, you start seeing, different things like this, it's really good indicator of that there's something more going on.
Yeah, and the electronics, it's more of a police thing, definitely, that actually contains the evidence. But if you're seeing lots of phones or laptops, whatever, those are often used to create the prostitution ads and then also do the communication, setting up those deals and everything. Money, of course, receipts can be great because they show what people bought, where they were, what time it was. Even they can show kind of records of travel if there's receipts from other states or cities or whatever it is. You're seeing a bunch of hotel room receipts or rental agreements, hotel room keys, stuff like that. Lots of condoms or feminine hygiene products. Again, with the travel documents showing where they've been coming and going from. Clothing, of course, could be an indicator or potential evidence. Gang indicia, there is sometimes gang involvement in these where gangs are running girls. I don't know if you guys do much training or whatever with gangs, but it could be colors or whatever else. And anything that could contain DNA could potentially be evidence of something in one of these. We do get a lot of reports that are like sex assaults and things like that later turn out to potentially be like a prostitution deal or something. So that could be considered evidence. So a little bit about our unit and how we get connected with these. Mostly from, well, I shouldn't say mostly from, but a lot from patrol. They'll go out on a call for service, or potentially you guys see something, you have patrol come out, and then they would relay that information to us to investigate further. We get a lot of tips from family members. They'll see some weird things going on in their relative's life, and they'll let us know. We work with a lot of other both local and federal law enforcement agencies. We help each other out a lot, share information, because a lot of these are not just simply tied to our city. They may start here, they may end here, they may pass through here, whatever, but they kind of go all over the place. There's hotlines where people can make anonymous tips. We get quite a few of those as well. Our unit also does some proactive operations. The main purpose with those is to kind of address some of the demand, targeting the buyers. So we've done various different types of operations. You'll see a little picture later on of what we do, but it could be online, street level prostitution, whatever. We've probably done something like that. All right, so a couple more terms: the track or the blade. These are terms for common geographical locations where prostitution is known to occur a lot. So we got a few pictures on here. There's obviously the street level prostitution, where here in the city of Mesa, probably the most common areas for that are going to be on Main Street, like around Alma School-ish, or out east, perhaps around Power Road-ish, but definitely not limited to those. There's other areas around the valley as well that are really known for that. And then we've got the little massage picture up there. And unfortunately, Mesa is home to a number of massage establishments that are really just brothels. They are most commonly associated with a certain ethnicity. However, that is not the case 100% of the time. But yeah, that is a issue in the city of Mesa. And I don't know if you guys get called out to those ever or at all, but just be aware of that. And the digital track is where we see most of the action nowadays. The pimps will post ads or have their girls post ads on websites that are just straight up advertising prostitution. On here, Escort Alligator and Double List and Skip the Games. They basically, that's just what they do, is they advertise prostitution on their websites. And there's many, 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 many more that are just like that. Not that long ago, some of you may have heard of the website Backpage. That used to be the one-stop shop for all of your prostitution needs. But the feds shut that down, which was like, yeah, it's great that that got shut down. But then what happened was all of these other websites popped up. So it did create some challenges for law enforcement. But now there's so many different places for people to advertise. A couple of these other ones on here are a little bit more subtle. Adult Friend Finder, not a good place to find friends, probably. It advertises itself as more of a like casual encounter type website. However, there's a lot of prostitution on there. Seeking Arrangements, it runs what we would consider sugar daddies, where you have girls posting their profiles, and then guys hit them up and they work out some sort of an arrangement for basically sex for an allowance or something like that. And then Rub Maps is related to our massage businesses. It's basically like Yelp for massage brothels. So people will go on there and they'll click on the massage business that they recently received services from, and they will write a very detailed review of what occurred and how much it cost and all that stuff. And so if you're a potential customer of those, you'll get on there and look at the reviews of a location you're interested in and see if they have what you're looking for and possibly visit it. So again, these are all websites people are using, which you might see on someone's phone if you're on a call. They might reference it, and at least you would kind of know what they're talking about. So who are the buyers? We can tell you for sure it's pretty much anyone could be. So anybody who you think, or type of person or whatever, you think there's no way this could possibly be a buyer of sex. Well, you could be wrong. So we've gotten people from all walks of life. There isn't much of a common denominator, except that for the most part, they tend to be males. So yeah, don't discount the fact that anybody could be a potential buyer just from how they look or something like that. What do we do about the demand? Well, we do our operations that we mentioned. And you've probably seen on the news some stories and things like that, which we hope will deter people from doing this stuff in the future. We do a lot of intelligence gathering, both for our own investigations, and we help other agencies as well. And like I mentioned before, sometimes we'll get a tip or something like that with some limited information, and we'll document that stuff now. And there may not be anything more we can do it at the moment, but later on, it could be years later on, a victim will be ready to talk, or something else will happen that we'll be able to move further on in an investigation. We also work with our local government here and state government for stronger legislation against this stuff, especially with the younger people, and hopefully get harsher penalties for offenders to further deter people from doing this stuff. Do you have anything you want to add at the moment? No. All right. So this is the photo on the left is us running one of our operations. And we oftentimes do these with other agencies and so forth. So it's not just us, but we'll work together with other agencies, chatting online with people who want to buy kids for sex, basically. And the picture on the right is just one of the arrestees that we've had from our operations. We have a lot, but that's just one of them. So this dude was a security guard, pretty regular looking fella, but just to give you an idea, it can be anybody. And just so you all know, our unit is literally just the three of us. So it's a little challenging with just having it be the three of us, but we do the best that we can. So anyways, human trafficking is the #2 criminal enterprise behind drugs. And they are a lot of times intertwined. A lot of times the traffickers will use the girl's dependence on drugs or something to help control them. Or they may be selling drugs and whatnot as another source of income. But yeah, there's a lot of money involved. The product being the person essentially means that the trafficker can use and reuse that same product over and over and over again and continue making money, which makes it very lucrative for them. They're not having to re-up from their supplier or anything like that. They've got their product right there all the time. So we want to be able to devote as many resources as possible to trying to stop this, but it is definitely a challenge with limited resources. Speaking of resources, there's a lot of nonprofit groups or organizations that they help provide us, whether it's training or supplies or whatever. We collaborate with them. They're a great help to us. We work with a lot of other local and federal law enforcement agencies. We try and help each other with intelligence or bodies, because sometimes we just plain need more people to do certain things. We have a protocol for if we have a suspected trafficked juvenile with medical professionals and DCS and everything to try and get them the resources that they need. So we do work with a lot of different people on this.
And we did bring in some brochures and some flyers and things about trafficking and some cards that have different shelters in different places in case anybody's interested in that. They do have them here to give out.
And we'll also, at the end of this, it'll have our contact info. If there is any other, if you guys think of something later or would like some additional resources or something like that, feel free to shoot us an email or give us a holler and we'd be glad to help. All right, so this is a little summary of a case that started out as a med call back late last year. A guy called 911 saying that his girlfriend fell and was hurt. And that was the initial information that was received. So based on that, it was just a med call. And actually, Kathleen, do you want to?
However, once you guys got out there and I think you guys called PD to come out and help, but basically what had happened is this guy that had called in, he was a pimp or is a pimp, and he and his girlfriend, actually the girl that was working for him, got into an argument. She wasn't wanting to work anymore. He decided that she was going to work or else, and ended up throwing her off the 3rd-story balcony of the apartment complex. Then he went downstairs and picked her up, brought her back up to the apartment, and then called 911. And then that's how, this is like a great example of how a lot of things happen and they may not seem right at the beginning. Because I think when fire showed up and got to the apartment, they were like, something more happened than her just falling down inside the apartment. She's got a lot of breaks and injuries and everything else. And another example of this call is he was one of the star basketball players for U of A. So it's people from all walks of life.
I was actually on this call.
Okay. So yes, we're still working this call, but he is definitely a pimp. He was running lots of girls. He has his girlfriends, he's got his baby mamas, he's got a couple of those. And this was a great call, but it was one of those ones that just kind of escalates and you're like, there's something more going on. There's something more going on.
Yeah, she told us when we got there, initially she fell inside the bedroom. Something just wasn't really jiving with what she was telling us. And then it progressed to she fell down the stairs and then over the balcony of the stairs. And it was crazy. It made no sense. There was no way that what she said happened could have possibly happened.
Right. And this is a perfect example of, when you guys are like, there's something more going on. These injuries are not adding up. And we tried to get the 911 call so we could embed it in this video so you guys could hear it. But when he calls 911, he is perfectly calm. He is not excited. He's not worked up. He was just like, my girlfriend fell. I think she's hurt.
And he took off when he called. So he brought her back up there and then he took off.
Yeah, that was one other thing that was really weird to us, was that the boyfriend was the person who supposedly called and he was nowhere to be found. So that kind of tipped us off that clearly something else was going on here. And she was very standoffish about what happened, but the more we tried to help her feel comfortable and feel safe, the more she kind of didn't tell us what happened, but as we asked questions, she would kind of say yes or no.
And that's one of the things that we've gotten from several of our victims that fire has rolled out on, is they've told us after the fact that if they were separated from the person that called or the person that was standing there or, the person that was answering questions, they would have given more information, but they were afraid to. And I know you guys are kind of limited about telling other people, hey, you need to step away or you need to get back. But if you guys notice anything like that, that's a great time to give us a call.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And this one too, pretty much many of the things we talked about with the victim mindset and the distrust of police and all of that was true when the victim was initially contacted. And it took several multiple visits before she finally disclosed what was really happening in the relationship.
And I don't think she got comfortable enough to actually give us everything until he was arrested.
Yeah.
But some of the terms that we didn't really bring up is, we talked about the grooming period where a lot of these girls start out with the boyfriend, and that's called the Romeo boyfriend. He starts out and they actually think he's, a nice guy, a romantic. He buys her things. He gets her hair done. He gets her nails done. He buys her purses and shoes. And quite quickly, they turn into what they call the gorilla boyfriend, the gorilla pimp, because now it's, I've done this for you. Now you owe me. Now you're going to work this money off. You're going to pay me back for all the money that I've, paid out for you. And some of these girls are just because of the situations they're in or their background or their home life, they really are in love with these guys. And they don't realize until it's too late what has happened. And then they don't know how to get out of it. And then when it comes down to it, they're afraid to get them in trouble. So the mindset is huge. And like you said, when the story started getting inconsistent, that's when you're like, okay, there's something more going on.
Alrighty. Well, I would like to open it up for a moment for any questions that you guys might have. And you also see if you guys do have anything that you think of later, I put our contact info up here as well. But yeah, any questions you guys have at the moment?
Thank you for you and your team for coming out. Does anyone have any questions? If you can't think of anything, please reach out. You can reach out to us and we can connect you if you don't get the email addresses or the phone numbers down as well.